I want to talk about vegan versus plant-based versus keto versus paleo versus all the things in between, and a little something called MTHFR. For those of you who might not know me super well, again, my name is Renee Jane, and I'm a functional therapist and a holistic nutrition practitioner and a life coach or somatic coach. So I want to share just a little bit about why I'm talking about this, feeling like a fraud, but I think it just involves a little bit of my story. I won't go into tons of detail, but in a nutshell, in around 2002 or 2003, I really started diving more deeply into food and understanding aspects of how eating affected how I felt in my body. When I was 19, I'm proud to say I'm 39, almost 40. So when I was 19, so 20 years ago, I started doing studies to become a life coach. And I didn't anticipate being a life coach back then. I just thought having the training would help me heal some stuff from my childhood and life in general, right? But as I was doing that work, a lot of the stuff I realized that was coming up, I kind of hid my food issues. I didn't talk about them to the life coach. So in 2002 and 2003, what started to happen was these food issues became prevalent, and I started noticing my addictions to sugar and to food, and also started becoming really excited and, dare I say, interested in food. And I'm going to cut to the keep a long story short. I got really excited. I formed a partnership with all the local farmers in my area, and I would go help out at those farms and pull weeds and help them with their crops. I started my own organic garden and had a compost pile. And my favorite highlight of the day back then, and still is if I could look at my plate and the entire meal would be from local food sources. That still makes me so happy. So that kind of tells you in a nutshell a little bit about where I was. I had gone from being really addicted to sugar and loving like Snickers bars, and I was eating a lot of fast food back then, and drinking Coca-Cola and barbecue potato chips daily. I was a cigarette smoker back then, to doing this big shift around my food. And so anyway, I eventually had a child. I nursed for a really long time, and I did the whole thing around getting my house clean of toxic cleaners, and I fed my son all homemade baby food. And I went back to school at that time when he was born. Actually, in 2009, I went to school at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and studied a lot around my body and became pretty focused on all health-related things. And so I've tried and partaken in almost every kind of diet, or I hate calling it a diet, to be honest with you. But that's a cultural word, but every kind of food plan you can imagine. I've been vegan for a long time. I've been vegetarian. I've eaten fish also. I've identified with the book Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan, which was actually one of the biggest catalysts to me getting into food and health. Love that book and really adore Michael Pollan and what he stands for. And, a lot of the things that I noticed around my food addiction started to shift. I became more healthy, but I was still hiding out a little bit and eating healthier sweets. So there's all kinds of things I started to learn. And when I started my practice, this was in 2009, 2010, started my practice as a holistic nutrition practitioner. One of the things that I started out doing was teaching people how to detox and cleanse their body. And these were whole food cleanses and detoxes. And the very first cleanse I ever hosted back then was called the Clean Your Temple Cleanse. And one of my doctor friends, Dr. Schindler, if he's watching this, he'll laugh too, but I remember him saying, "Are you sure you want to call it that? Like, Clean Your Temple sounds like you're getting like a colonic or an enema or something. So anyway, I changed the name, and since then, like hundreds and hundreds, thousands, people have gone through that cleanse, which I'm not currently running as a cleanse by itself, but I do teach the principles to clients. But this is important to share, because this idea of cleansing and detoxing was really important to me. It's how I started to heal my body. And so I thought, okay, I need to share this with other people. That's kind of how things work. We learn something and we share it. But then over years had gone by, I started noticing, as I was doing this cleanse and doing different kinds of eating, understanding my body, things would happen. For example, when I was 19, I had shingles. When I was 16, I had high cholesterol. At one point, I had almost no immune system. The doctors thought that I had leukemia. I did not, thankfully. But I was basically so exposed to so many different things that were affecting my immune system, it didn't really know how to function. I had thyroid issues. I had some nodules on my thyroid, which thankfully I was able to heal naturally without any medication. And there's a lot of other things too, but like these were some of the things that I would come up against, and then I would dive in deep. And so one of my biggest values as a practitioner has always been to learn and to be a student, and that we don't know everything, and that if we are not sure about something with our own body, that it's important that we kind of take a step back and be our own client, our own patient, and figure it out, so then we can therefore serve other people. And so one of the things that started to happen to me along my journey was I was eating primarily plant-based, and I'll say vegan. I've also done raw vegan, but I live in Michigan where it's cold, and to me it's been very hard. For those of you who follow Ayurveda, I'm a Vata primarily, and I couldn't go to the bathroom basically if I ate too much raw food and it's cold. So cooking food became important to me. And as I began this process, I love animals. And so, it was a choice not only for my body, but it was also a choice because I didn't want to hurt animals, particularly cows. I'm really against factory farming. I'm not going to get all into that today, but the personal becomes political. And the political is personal. And when I think about what has helped me grow and sustain a lot of the things in my practice as a practitioner for others, but also for myself, it's been really understanding the politics behind the food that have kept me going. So I think it's important to mention that. Also seeing the documentary, I don't remember when it came out, it seems like a few years ago at least, Cowspiracy, and other documentaries that really point to the fact that doing away with eating meat would really help our environment drastically. And so this was a really important deal for me too. So here's what I've been kind of afraid to talk about with people, because this is something that happened to me. So the immediate effects of me being vegan were really wonderful for my body, probably detoxing, feeling good. And then slowly I started feeling like complete crap. And I want to be really clear when I say this. I am not bashing the vegan diet. I actually believe that eating primarily plants and plant-based is the healthiest thing we can do for our diet, or our body. And I also really want to make a point in saying that I see with so many of my clients, so many of my friends, that eating vegan has been so helpful and changed their lives. And so I really am a proponent of doing that. And here's what I know. We're unique. Our bodies are unique, and not one thing works for every single person. And there's so many, here's the truth. One of the things that was really painful for me was I was trying so hard to be a great vegan. And what I mean by that is perfectionist stuff came up for me, right? I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'm really smart about a lot of things in this field. And I have a lot to learn too, right? Because nutrition is a fledgling science. It changes all the time. And any moment we think we know something, we get smacked and realize we really don't. But I was so afraid of hearing from people. I guess maybe it was just wanting to be validated or something, but I was so afraid from hearing those words of like, well, you just don't know how to be a vegan. Because I was doing a lot of like all the things. I was giving myself shots in my ass of B12 with a needle every day. I'm taking all like the best like supplements, I was finding the best. All the gut healing, understanding about mitochondria and building up, and rebuilding my microbiome, and making sure I had all these delicious, tasty foods. And what was happening as I was on this journey is that my estrogen was increasing a lot. So my period started changing. And at the beginning, I thought, okay, well, maybe this is just some kind of detox effect, right? So I just ignored it for a while. But then I started getting bigger breasts. My estrogen was increasing so much that I went and got things checked out. My breasts were really sore, and I found out that I had cysts in my breasts. Now, again, I want to state, if you're just joining in, I'm not bashing being vegan and saying this is going to make your estrogen increase. This is my body experience, okay? So what I have seen, though, is that so many people that I love dearly who are part of the vegan community, and even some friends have said this to me, that they believe so strongly in being against animal cruelty that even if their bodies were suffering, they would still continue to be vegan. I can respect that that's their belief and totally get it. So hence part of the feeling like a fraud, I was hiding, afraid to share with my fellow practitioners, with other people who were part of this. And I also want to say too, this is not just one of those other videos like, ooh, the vegan becomes someone who eats meat. Like, that's not what I'm talking about today. Because there's so many of those videos, and those annoy the daylights out of me, to be honest. So I just wanted to have it all figured out. I wanted to understand why my body was doing this, and it was really frustrating. Not only frustrating for my own body, but frustrating, makes me want to cry almost, because I want to help people, and I couldn't figure out like why I can't get this right. I'm doing all the things. I am gonna cry. Okay, that's okay. So what started happening is I started gaining weight. A lot of it around my hips and my belly, which is a sign, if you don't know, of a lot more estrogen. And having a lot of estrogen in your body, by the way, funny enough, the crying, because I was crying so much back then, the people in my life just knew that I was very hormonal. I was so emotional. Having a lot of estrogen in our body is not a good thing. It's just not. And so then you would have these people who would come in who think they know everything, and they're like, well, Renee, you really need to stop eating things out of plastic containers, and you probably have too many chemicals in your household. And I'm looking at them like, I eat out of all glass everything. I mean, I'm not perfect, but like most everything is in glass jars and glass containers in my house. I would look at them and think like, I only clean with vinegar and essential oils. And, so like I started going down the list, like, what am I missing? What am I missing? So I went to see my doctor. He's a holistic medical doctor. And at the time I went to see him because I was noticing, very intuitive with my body, and I noticed that there were some issues going on with my liver and my gallbladder. And I was very bloated and had all these estrogen problems. And it's called estrogen dominance, if you're unfamiliar with the terminology. And I was telling him like, hey doc, like when I'm pushing on my gallbladder as I'm talking to you, but as I like push in on there, I can like get the bile to move, but it's hard and it feels stuck. And I shouldn't have to manipulate my own gallbladder to get it to work properly. And so he basically reaches in and squeezes my gallbladder. It hurt. I don't recommend this at home to anyone, but like he knew what he was doing. And all of a sudden it was like this release, and we started having this really awesome conversation about the body, and telling him about what I've been doing and the journey I've been on. And he looked at me and he said, you know what, Renee, eating some grass-fed beef again, like you used to, especially around your cycle, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. He's like, I have to do the same. I'd prefer to be all vegan and vegetarian, but I just can't for my body, and your body might be the same. And he said, it's either the cow or it's you. And it really stuck with me. And like, if you know me personally, I know this seems weird, but like, I would scream out the window when I was 16 years old passing a cow farm and say hi to the cows. Like, I love cows and I don't want to kill cows. But I also noticed that I couldn't help people unless I figured out how to help myself, and that I couldn't find this avenue to get healthy unless I was starting to add some meat back in. So I started eating meat a couple times a month. I've gotten my meat only from local farms for probably 15, 17, somewhere in there years now, when I ate meat, obviously. So I was really particular about where it came from. And I really got really healthy, like no sugar, got really strict. I was running sugar detoxes for my community. And of course, when you eat meat, you start understanding more about this paleo and ketogenic community. Okay. So for those of you who are still tuning in, thank you for listening. I can't tell who's even watching. So, because I have this through Zoom and I purposely can't kind of see the chat. So what I started noticing as I experimented with some of the principles in the ketogenic diet or the paleo community was that it made my gallbladder and even worse. Basically, I was having a hard time breaking down fat. My body could not do it in the way that I wanted it to. I was noticing a lot of symptoms, again, coming up with hormones that were different kind of symptoms, more with testosterone and progesterone being out of balance. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail there, but it started teaching me a little bit about, wow, okay, maybe my body's not detoxing properly. Why is that? So I started to learn something about methylation. And here, I want to say on a side note too, that I'm still doing mostly plant-based eating. I just heard somewhere that there's people who eat meat only, which I think is insane. That's a whole nother conversation to have. It's so important not to eat too much protein. But I was eating mostly plants with some meat, and I was doing like oil pulling, soaking in Epsom salt baths. I'm jumping on a rebounder. I'm trying to detoxify through sauna or sweating as much as I could. I was doing dry brushing and castor oil packs and learning about, enema, like coffee enemas. And I mean, the list goes on. It's a full-time job, and many people may relate to that. I hear that from my clients all the time. Like, it's a full-time job. Sometimes just taking care of our body. From like going in, like the gallbladder, by the way, is kind of under your right rib cage is your liver, and then down below the gallbladder is almost like a pear shape. And, I was like daily massaging that area of my body and like sending energy and Reiki to my liver. And, there's always somebody who's like, wait, you need this essential oil, or you need this supplement. And it wasn't that I was blocking those things, as I'm so open and I use all those things. But I was just frustrated and so like just done. Like, why can't I freaking figure this out with my body? Then, this is the turning point, I decided to get a genetic test. And I tested for MTHFR, which sounds, excuse my language if you have children present, but sounds like motherfucker. It kind of is. MTHFR is a genetic anomaly, also known as a SNP, SNP, or it could also be called a polymorphism. There's different names for it, or a variant. So these are parts of our genetics that either are turned on or off. I am happy, by the way, to talk more about this in another webinar. So if you have interest in learning more, like write me and make comments if you relate, or please share yourself with me also, because I really think that part of how we heal is by talking with each other and being in community. And so some people in my family have MTHFR. So that's why I thought, well, I'm going to check this out for myself. And I knew that the MTHFR was a big deal, but I didn't think that it would be such a reason for why my body wasn't detoxing properly, and it turns out it was. On a side note, I want to say this. There's so much that people resist nowadays with getting their genes tested because of companies that sell our data. As a functional therapist, I use a company when I work with my clients that is not, I'm not going to say it out loud right now because I'm not here to promote the company, but if you work with me as a client, I use a company that is not known very well. They're a small company and they don't sell their data, and it allows me to help you understand your genes a bit better. And if I can't help you, because my knowledge is only so vast when it comes to genes, then I would refer you to somebody who can. Anyway, so this led me down this path of, okay, so what is MTHFR? MTHFR basically means that we need to avoid things like folic acid. Folic acid is hidden in all kinds of things like bread and pasta and a lot of processed foods. It also means that our detoxification is impaired. And when I found this out, it was almost a relief for me, because I started realizing like, oh, that's why. It was like all these light bulbs went on and I felt seen. I felt like, this is why I've struggled. This is why I've struggled. And so what I want, there's another side note to make of this too, that's kind of personal, but I wasn't pooping every day. And that's a concern when you are working with a health practitioner such as myself or someone else. Like, they want to know if you're going to the bathroom every day. And if you're not, it's not healthy. You need to like get that out of your body every single day. And so that was like a big thing for me. Like, I needed to figure out how to get my body to detox and to let go. And part of that is an emotional thing. And part of it is our physical body also. And so, one of the things that I want to share with everyone is like drinking lots and lots of water is so important. But why is this important? Because I've learned that about 40%, this is an estimate, of people have at least one of the MTHFR genes. One of my other doctors, she's a functional medical doctor, her and I were having a conversation not too long ago, and she was like, there's a lot of different MTHFR polymorphisms and variants that we don't even know about yet. But there are some that we do know quite a bit about, and there's so much science that's being discovered, and there's a ton of doctors and other practitioners such as myself who know a ton of information on this. And so the good news is that we know a lot more, and we also know that a few things can be the case. One, as I've learned, is that being like all paleo or all keto, of course we knew this because no diet works for everyone, doesn't work for everybody. There's ways to be an exceptional vegan, and it works for some people, but it doesn't work for everybody. And here I was as a practitioner, and like, vegan didn't work for me. Plant-based with some fish didn't work for me. Eating, a keto, paleo-friendly diet didn't fully work for me. And so I started like realizing that there has to be something else I can do. And at the same time this was happening, I was working with all of these amazing clients. And in the 9 years I've been in practice, I mean, I don't have any exact statistics right now to back this up. So I'm just going to be clear on that. But I can tell you that when I started my practice over 9 years ago, maybe one of my clients, maybe two, would have an immune system issue, maybe an autoimmune symptom. Nowadays, almost all, if not very high percentages of people have some kind of autoimmune issue going on. A lot of people are being diagnosed with things like Lyme disease. And the research that I have been doing and the understanding that I have when it comes to things like MTHFR, having this particular gene mutation, or having autoimmune issues, or having Lyme disease. As much as I want to be able to tell you, like, let's save the planet, stop eating all the cows, which I know is not going to happen overnight, and just heal ourselves with beautiful plants, it's not the best thing for everyone in order to find their healing. And so it creates this conundrum, one that I'm afraid to talk about sometimes, right? One that makes me want to hide out as a practitioner a little bit, because I want to say, like, let's save the animals, but I also want to save the humans too, right? The ones that are struggling. Like Lyme disease, as an example, is no freaking joke. And I know a lot of people who hide out as vegans who have Lyme disease, and they don't want to come out and say, hey, I had to eat meat in order to heal. And I think there's something wrong with that. I am not perfect by any stretch of the imagination in knowing every answer here. And I am not dogging on people who, a lot of these diets or plans have worked so well for them. All I'm offering up to you is that if 40% of people on average are dealing with MTHFR, and those are the people who know they have it. So what about the people who don't know that they have it? And they're struggling with what to eat. The biggest question I get as a health practitioner is, what the heck do I eat? I don't know what to eat. I'm so frustrated. I don't know what to eat, Renee. Can you just tell me, give me the plan? And I look at them, I'm like, I got to know more information. I can't just give you the plan. It just doesn't work that way. And then we grasp onto these ideas and think that they're going to be our savior in a sense. And you know, I'm studying more and more about nutrigenomics, and what that nutrigenomics is, like how we can eat for our genes. I'm studying more and more about something called epigenetics, which means that nothing's permanent. It doesn't mean that just because we've been dealt a genetic hand, so to speak, in our body, that it's going to be that way forever, right? Things can change and we can evolve. I'm studying more and more for myself and for others about how to rebuild our microbiome and really how to help support our mitochondria. Mitochondria is like the powerhouse of our body. It is the battery that makes us run. It is the part that gets us to wake up in the morning, to move our body, to process and digest foods. It's our energy. So that led me to learn a lot more about something called oxidative stress, which is something that we experience from technology, our cell phones, to oxidative stress comes from the air we breathe, and even the chemicals, pesticides that are sprayed on some of our vegetables and things of that nature. So I know we need to reduce a lot of that oxidative stress, particularly if we have MTHFR. And I take like so many powerful, amazing supplements now that have helped me. And the reason I'm talking about this with you today is because I feel like I don't know how long it's been. I think it's been almost 3 years, 3 years. No, it's been 3 years. It's been a long road. But I feel like I'm on the other side of this now, where I have found what works for me, and I have found some peace. There's still emotion, clearly. I was sharing earlier, because I want to help people. Like, I didn't become a health practitioner because I was in it for the money, although, you know, that's awesome too. But it's more because, like, I really believe that when our bodies feel well, and when we love ourselves and we take care of ourselves and we have compassion for our bodies as they are, then we can help other people, that we show up in the world differently. And I'm not going to stand here as a, white woman who's somewhat slender and say, like, oh, here's what works for me, it should work for you, because it doesn't work that way. So your body might be completely different. You might have none of these genetic anomalies, but you might have other things. And what I want to do is I want to give you an invitation to explore more and to ask questions and to be a student yourself. So that way you can really get to the bottom of, like, what does your body need? And here are a few things. I'm going to kind of wrap up on this. And I want to ask you that if you have questions, that you post them in the comment section, or you send me a message. My website is reneejane.com, so we can continue this conversation. I'd love to hear more from you. I think the more I talk about this kind of thing with my clients and I help them, they say, oh my gosh, like I have this too, right? Then I send out their kit and they test their genetics, or they get a blood test and we read through it together and we understand things better. And we start getting this idea like, okay, yes, we need to drink a lot more water. Yes, we need to sweat more. Yes, we need some powerful ass supplements to supply our body where our soil has been so depleted. Yes, we need a lot more plants in our diet. Like, these are just basics. We need these things. Yes, we need to move, and we need oxygen and vitamin D, and we need B vitamins. Like, these are all really important things. And we need to support our gut health. Big time, because a lot of the things that we're eating, for example, gluten, it's partially gluten and it's partially the glyphosate that's being sprayed on our grains and our crops. This is not helping our body. And so there's so much, and there's just not one thing. And so when you see somebody who says, like, I eat ketogenic and it's saved my entire life, like, awesome, I'm so happy for them. And when you see somebody who says, like, I eat vegan and it's changed their entire life, I'm so happy for them. But, like, I'm speaking to the people in the between, right? The people who have tried all the things, and maybe someone's just not eating vegan properly. Maybe that's the case. Maybe someone's just not eating keto or paleo properly. Maybe that's the case. But maybe it's something else. Maybe it is something else. Maybe your body just isn't detoxing like mine wasn't, and that there's other things to be explored. And I want to give you permission to do that exploration. And I created this program called My Nutrition 360 that talks about these ideas with people and helps them to do that exploration, and mixes it with some healing of the trauma that we store in our body. Because I really believe, and there's no science on this yet that I have found, because I have looked, that our genetics have a lot to do. I shouldn't say there's no science on this. There might be some. I just haven't found it. But I really believe that sometimes the trauma that we have is passed on, of course, from our ancestors, and that this may impact our genes a little bit too. So there's so much. I could talk about this all day. And I want to say thank you if you've been tuning in and this has been all resonating. Thank you for listening. It's so wonderful to be here with all of you. I do hope to be talking with more of you soon. I hope you have a good day. Thank you.